they don't mind throwing heavy hands, And Michael Chandler put it on display again last night. In fact, it was some of the best striking I had seen from him in the UFC so far. He had connected on Dustin's head and chin a couple of times where
he was rocked.
Dustin got saved by the bell in the first round.
He got
if
rocked.
There was 10 more seconds or 11 more seconds, I think he would have knocked out Chandler. He would have knocked out Poirier. Yeah. He had connected with a couple, I can't remember. One might have been
he throws
uppercut and a hook.
Yeah, right
he
just throw those hook bombs.
Almost knocked his head off.
Just swinging for the
Poirier
fences.
looked like he wasn't going to be able to stand on his feet much longer. He was about to, he was a tree that was getting chopped down.
The wall was kind of holding him up. The cage was kind of holding him up. He was getting bounced around with those hooks. Because a guy like Chandler, he's just kind of balls to the wall all the time in a fight. He's always coming at you. And that's why he's so explosive. That's why he has some of those big knockouts. But as we saw later in the fight, that's also it's a gamble. When you're throwing big bombs, you're exposing yourself to shots too. So, but he's willing to take that risk, and the fight game is a risk. It's a roll of the dice, and he just goes for broke every fight, 100% balls to the wall, and it's something to watch. It was very, very entertaining fight. Just two guys just trying to blast each other's heads off, with everything they got. Very good.
Yeah, evenly matched in terms of build and strength. Of course, Michael Chandler is a shorter man. Let's take a look at their heights. So if I had to guess with Chandler, he's probably 5'7", 5'8", and Poirier I think is about 5'10". That would be my guess.
He's 5'8". Yeah.
So yeah, Chandler's 5'8", maybe a little short. He's on the shorter side of that division, just kind of like Frankie was at 5'6". And then Poirier's, I want to say 5'10" or 5'11".
5'9".
Or 5'9".
That's not huge.
Actually, but you know what's weird though? I love it when you see a height difference. It's only 1 inch, but it seems bigger.
Poirier's frame is bigger.
But the height wise, he seems like he's 2 or 3 inches above Chandler. And
Chandler had a very wide stance in that fight, so I think that kind of shortened him down a bit. But Poirier is, he seems big at that. He has a bigger frame.
He has this big V-shaped back. His shoulders are out here. Lean but thick. He's like thick slim.
yeah. We have they're skinny fat and thick slim. It's just
He's thick slim. And just good technique, good strength. He's up there in the top 5 where he as long as he's fighting, he's always going to be a top 5 guy unless he starts getting knocked out like Frankie Edgar or whatever. But in any event, what was impressive was Chandler had lifted up and slammed Dustin Poirier 3 times in that fight.
Very dramatically.
I didn't see Khabib do that. This was not I'm going to take you down and ground upon you. I'm going to do something that you have no choice in the matter. I'm going to slam you. We'll see where it goes from there, and just throwing all his energy into it. With Khabib, it was more of a controlled thing. He's going to pull you down and just drag you in and just pull you in. Yeah. Chandler's I'm going to throw you on a violent fucking ride like you're getting thrown out of a helicopter, and it's going to be a crash landing, and then we're going to fucking fight after you just got hit in the crash landing. It was just... I said this before. I think the best way to sum up Michael Chandler is when he lets his fist fly, when he lets go and just lets bombs start raining, it's magic, man. Magic happens during those times. And props to Poirier for withstanding the storm because he got hit with a lot of good shots. He was... And another thing that the reason that Chandler is one of my favorite fighters is I follow him on Instagram, and I see every day he's working. There's always a video up of a new day where he's lifting some kind of weight, working on explosive movement. There's no way you're lifting up another guy who, after weighing in at 155 pounds, is probably now closer to 180 something.
Yeah, I would say 175 probably.
At least. I would say that Poirier was probably 180, 185 by the time it was all said and done, once he was rehydrated or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm overestimating. Because if you went from 55, if you add 20 on that, so about 175 probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I know they used to say Georges St. Pierre, when he would fight at 170 pounds, would cut down to 170, and by the next day, after he was rehydrated and fed, would be about 188. So he'd put on almost 20 pounds in almost a 24-hour period. Kind of crazy.
That is. Where they're just eating all the time, pounding water, just
rehydrating, ramen, getting all that water weight back in your system, and then fucking. It shows you though. Think about how scary that is. your body was able to put on 20 pounds of weight, roughly, right? 18 pounds of weight overnight because that's how badly you were drained to get to 170. Like, you could literally add almost 20 pounds of weight simply overnight.
It's wild. It's wild. The human body is a crazy thing. Like, it's you wouldn't think that would be possible. Like, you know, because people talk about, you know, how hard it is to, like, lose weight, but then you don't really talk about how easy it is to put it on too.
I've said that for many years. My little joke, my little thing that I would say is that that adding weight, it's like arithmetic. It's like it's easier to add than subtract. Like, that's what I was like, it's just like simple math or whatever, and it's weird how it works out that way. Like, you want to gain weight, just start eating a bunch of bullshit, right? And pack it on where you haven't even barely digested the first thing, you're adding more. Your body's going to start storing it because there's nothing else it can do. But in any event, that fight was everything that I had hoped for and more. It was just, I said it when the fight was over. People were like, oh, you know, like I said Poirier was going to win. I was like, there is no losers here, only 2 winners. Like, they made it a thriller of a fight. He could have went out and been more conservative and maybe won it, you know, but it's like, you know, it's funny because you maybe you overcommit to something, your balance is off, and then you roll into a bad position or you get caught with something. Then it is what it is. But the fact that he's willing to put it out there on the line, it makes it for an electrifying fight every fucking time.
Yeah, and I thought that Poirier to come back, you know, the way he did after almost getting kind of saved by the bell there at the end of the first round.
10, 15, 20 more seconds. He
could have been any man's fight, you know. And for him to come back, though, just kind of recalibrate and just hit on the gas. What did I say? Like, put that fucking Louisiana hot sauce into those punches.
I like that, yeah.
You know, I just watching him strike, just with the precision and the power behind his punches.
He picked his places to do it.
He's kind of picked Chandler apart there, toe to toe. And it's just Dustin's he's more precise. Like, he throws down, like he's game his own and throws shots.
His game,
like,
as they call him, yeah.
But like Chandler's like he's basically like mauling you like a wild animal, and Poirier's more like it's more of a surgical thing with him, and he was able to capitalize on that and just connect. Like he hit Chandler with just these precise power shots that just, and I was actually surprised Chandler was able to stay on his feet for as long as he did, taking those hits, because he was just cracking him clean in the face, just and Chandler he was kind of like against the cage, and he was just trying to like respond, trying to hit him. Yeah, but like, dude, he was just so concussed that, like, you know,
there was no.
But he still had the willpower there. He was still trying to come back, still trying to throw, but he couldn't connect because he was just in the shadow realm, or the what does Ali say? Where it's the room where lizards play saxophones. That's what Ali said. Yeah, so that's where he was.
There's some Twilight Zone shit.
He's still the willpower was still like, I still gotta fucking.
If I throw something out the back, because
he's still trying.
He knows that when you're in the pocket like that and you're close enough to hit a guy, if you start throwing something, you might get connected. I've seen fights,
you do.
The momentum shift, and then another guy ended up winning because they threw an overhand, even though they were getting belted. They just tossed something over.
Line bomb,
yeah. The other guy's focusing on where he's going to hit him, and just all of a sudden the overhand right comes in and just levels the guy.
Yeah.
Or just stuns him so bad that the next few shots that are coming, the guys barely have enough strength to throw, but they connect with the right shots, you know. Because if they've already been worn down, then it's easier to just turn off the volume and put them to sleep. But
that's what makes the sport so interesting, is because it's so dynamic. Like, you never know; it changes from moment to moment. The momentum shift. You never know how it's going to go till it's over. So
yeah, Dustin Poirier said it in the. You know, I was reading some quotes from him this morning in a news article, and he says, you know, he has this very, very good philosophy about fighting. He's like, you know, people ask me if I'm scared, you know, when I go into these fights, and he's like, yeah, I am a little bit nervous. He's like, but that's kind of what lets me know that I'm doing something so big, is that, like, he's like, I think if you're not nervous and you're going in there without, like, realizing the magnitude of what you're about to do and who you're about to face, that's maybe not the right approach for fighting. Like, I think he says almost like the nerves and a little bit of anxiety is a healthy thing, because it keeps you sharp. It keeps you, like, knowing that the severity of the outcome, what it could be, the damage you could suffer if you're not on point, like, I think is what he's saying. Like, you realize, like, you're going in there with a killer, man. A guy's going to let his hands fly. One of the most vicious fighters, one of the most entertaining, electrifying people to watch. dude, one false move and it's lights out. And like you take any fight with Chandler where he's lost, it could have easily won too. He knocks out Dan Hooker in this beautiful flowing looping thing, kind of what he was coming into the face of Poirier and Gaethje with, or Oliveira. So he comes in, knockout win, first fight in the UFC, clean knockout, just flying on. You could see here's your meteor going to rise. He gets his next fight. It's a title shot against Charles Oliveira. Almost knocks him out. Same thing that he almost did to Poirier in the first round, except for Poirier stood on his feet and was lucky because if the time was run out, Chandler had almost a full gas tank still. He would have rained bombs until Poirier wasn't on his feet anymore. Very lucky. They're lucky that sometimes it happens where the fighters will survive to get into the next round. They'll get that quick refresher and maybe take it easy and pace themselves a little bit to get their win back, and then they start getting in the zone and they're less nervous and they're ready to go again. They make that recovery. But in any event, with the Oliveira fight in Chandler, Oliveira was on the ground crumpled and was getting his head smashed from the side. And Chandler, he's a shorter guy. He's got those T-Rex arms, short like mine. Probably mine are short or whatever. But the ability to generate a lot of power and torque in a very small amount of space. So he's just wailing on his head. Bell saves fucking Charles Oliveira. Second round, the script gets flipped. Oliveira comes in, rocks Chandler. Hit him with a really good, precise shot. He's another guy, maybe even more precise than Poirier, which is hard to say because Poirier is a very good striker, very good boxer. Without showing it off, like you got Nate Diaz, where it's just like he'll show you boxing skill, where it's like I'm just gonna straight up box with you. Like here it is. Pretty much. Poirier's a little more sneaky about it. He's flowing. He just works it in and hits you with really hard shots. He's got a lot of power because of that upper body that he has.
Yeah.
But in any event, so Chandler almost wins the championship in his second fight. It would have been a dream come true for him. After that, who's going to get the next title shot? Well, here comes Justin Gaethje. You're looking at the new, improved, 2.0 version of Justin Gaethje. Incredibly violent power, hands of stone, just deceptively violent power. Like, you look at Michael Chandler, you're like, that guy's so jacked, he's just strong. You can see it.
Yeah, he's built like Gaethje, a gorilla.
Not really a six-pack, but a flat stomach. He's kind of like dad bod light or something like that. He's not, jacked. He's not fat. He's just a slim frame. Has the strongest leg kicks in the game. An uppercut like a fucking shovel. And just very precise striking. He worked on that a lot. Two guys where it's like the UFC and all of us are better for having seen Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler fight. And the same thing with Poirier last night. And it's just so crazy for Chandler. I do hope that he wins the championship one day, but it's so hard when you're facing... I'm rooting for you, Michael Chandler, if you're out there listening to this. If you hear this back, God willing, my voice will reach people like you, and I'm your biggest fan, brother, and, we hope that you can win it, but the competition is so stiff, and the way you put yourself out on the line, it's just hard, man. One day it could be yours. It came so close with Oliveira to achieving your dream. Like, the thing about fighting is, if this is what you want to do, people can literally watch you on a world stage achieve your life's goal, your life's work. We see the culmination of that, or and the thing you see is the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Both things are very powerful. And now you have Islam Makhachev comes in and beats Charles Oliveira. So now you just have there's so many people in that weight range that we're seeing the cream of the crop fighters from around the world being brought together in the UFC to battle it out.
And I feel like a lot of these top 5 guys that are, say the lightweight division, I mean, it could go, if you just ran them, in a digital simulation or whatever, I mean, it would just switch around. If everybody fought each other, 10 times over, 15 times over,
this guy won 40% of the time, the other guy won 60% or something.
They would all be champion at some point, and just some a little more often than the others and some a little less. It's just,
and it also depends on who's holding the belt at the time. Because what you don't see in fighting very often that we saw in the UFC, that we saw at 155 pounds, is Khabib Nurmagomedov goes 28-0 and ends his career, goes out on a high, which is the best way to go.
He did honestly, it right.
I think it's you're out now and you said you're out, stay out. We don't need to see the legacy fight, the George St. Pierre. If you were still fighting and your father hadn't passed away, and you didn't want to do this anymore without your father, your mother didn't want you fighting without your father in your corner, just stay out, man. As much as I would love to see this super mega fight or see Khabib facing some of those guys at 170, I'm sure he'd fuck them up too. I don't need to see it.
No,
I want to see somebody preserve a perfect record.
Yes, definitely. I agree. And also, he's kind of almost living vicariously through Islam, sort of,
Now he
as
kind of
his
is,
protege.
yeah.
So
It's me in there still.
it's his influence still. He hasn't completely divorced himself from fighting. You know, in Islam I mean, wow, there's proof in the pudding right there. Like the Khabib method works.
And he mentioned that in his so recently. Unfortunately, you weren't here to see that in person, but you did watch the replay back briefly.
Yeah,
This morning, only a round and a half or almost 2 rounds, but unfortunately, it wasn't Charles Oliveira's day that day. Even though he's an elite fighter, in any event, Islam Makhachev wins the day. Khabib comes in the cage. It's a celebration, and Islam mentioned the losses. He didn't. He's had. See if you can pull up his record real quick.
So I don't think
I think he's only 2 or 3 losses, and maybe just 2. I think he's like, I don't know. I'll wait to hear the actual record. I don't need to speculate, but I know it's not much.
Let's see here. Oh yeah, 23 wins, 1 loss, and yeah. So it looks like just 1.
23 wins and 1 loss, or 23 wins.
Yeah.
And 1
So
loss.
yeah, and then 1 draw.
In 1 draw. Okay, so I knew there was one. I think I felt like after having seen his record, there was one that was like, yeah, draw or no contest. But I thought they were both losses. But whatever. So he had a loss. He didn't have that perfect untarnished record like Khabib, but still Khabib. And then you shift over to Khabib, and he says, "We trained together all our lives. Like since we were kids. Like he was right there with me." And I'm actually glad they didn't have to face each other in the division. It's like they're kind of like a very similar guy or similar fighter. They have the same style. It's like I'd rather see one dude do it, and then the next one gets to take over. So like, in terms of if you're writing a script for a movie, this is probably the best way it could happen, so that like childhood friends don't have to fucking try to battle it out to the finish. I mean, they probably did that enough in the gym anyway. But if those guys were smart, I don't think they go hard enough where that they're hardy, but not hard enough where they're knocking each other out, which is probably for the best. You don't need to be getting knocked out in training. Then you don't even bring as much to the table to the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a balance to be struck certainly with that. So next fight.
We'll wrap up the ending. So here's how it ends. After what was a hailstorm of a fight with fucking hammers and nails flying everywhere, Dustin Poirier does something that he trained for by watching footage of Michael Chandler. They know that he's explosive on his back and has the ability because of his strength in his legs and his hips and his entire body, his core, is able to hip out or explode out of a position that somebody would normally be able to hold you in. He can just roll back out of it because he just explodes off of you. Not many guys have that. So Dustin Poirier said in the post-fight interview that we knew that because we watched footage of him, and so that my team told me you can't let him get his feet on the ground and planted. You have to roll him in such a way that his legs are useless, and you've taken that out of the equation. So he can't
just launch his way back.
Yeah, he can't launch off of you or twist to the side. And Dustin Poirier executed perfectly after being cracked a few times. Got Chandler's back and rolled him onto his side and choked him out that way. And he went out guns blazing. Had literally did the same thing to Poirier during the second round, had weighed on him like a wet blanket, just like Khabib used to do to people, was totally in control, was winning the fight up until that sequence. And that if there's anything that's painful for Chandler, it's got to be that. It's like, dude, you were winning these fights until those things happen. But, maybe they get a horse whisperer that gets in there and kind of does what like Trevor Whitman did with Gaethje. He's like, slow down a little bit. You don't need to be the highlight reel every single time. Let's pull it back and just be more economical and efficient with what we're doing, so you still have a gas tank and you haven't taken as much damage.
Yeah, because I think maybe it works for him and against him being that explosive. So he's more likely to get the knockout bomb early on or at whatever point. But at the same time, it's a lot. Granted, his conditioning is incredible, but that's a lot of juice out of the gas tank, and I think that leaves him open to taking those shots, especially when you're with a really dangerous striker like Poirier. When you're laying it on the line first round. I'm not saying he gassed out, but he didn't.
He definitely didn't because he was lifting Dustin Poirier up and slamming him in the third round after going full gas tank.
You cannot be as defensive. You lose your defensive ability when you're fatigued like that. Even if you're not gassed out, when you exert so much energy, I think that kind of maybe exposed him some of those more dangerous precision shots. It's harder to it's harder to account for that, harder to dodge, harder to manage it when you're really fucking tired.
Well, you're 1 second slower because you've expended so much energy in your output on offense that you didn't have your hand up when you needed to, or you were walking into something trying to dodge it, but you didn't have the explosive power to really get through it before it hit you, or whatever the case may be. So, but hats off to Michael Chandler for just enriching us all with watching what is the most beautiful about fighting, and graceful and just chaotic and just great fight. I look forward to every single fight the guy does, and I think on any given day the victory could be his, and hopefully he'll make those minor adjustments that he needs to make to be a champion. He deserves it. I don't know if there's anybody